Hey guys, welcome back to Aim High. This is a late night edition. I'm not going to be too long tonight, but I wanted to quickly address the situation that occurred earlier today with Damar Hamlin and Adrian Peterson. Yeah, so basically, Damar Hamlin was rocking out a specific type of attire. Hey, my brother, shout out to you, man. Good night, good night. Um, yeah, man. Look, Damar Hamlin was rocking a specific type of attire that rubbed Adrian Peterson the wrong way and rubbed quite a few believers the wrong way. I'm actually going to pull up an article. We're going to go through it. Shout out to my brother TJ. Check this article out, brother. I'm going to pull it up. And for those of you who are joining the stream, Aim High is the place to be. For those of you who are looking to grow and enhance your relationship with Jesus Christ, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. But yeah, man, look, man, let's dive into it because this actually was a big deal or is a big deal. But I'm just gonna say it right off the top. They did squash it, and we're gonna talk about that later on in the video. But let me pull this article up. Let me go through it. And the question is this, man. I posted a question here, actually. Who went too far? Who went too far? Was it Damar Hamlin or Adrian Peterson, in your opinion? So let me know, man, as I go through this article. Let me know. And I'm going to share with you guys my thoughts in regards to how Adrian Peterson addressed this issue. But first and foremost, let me pull this up. Hopefully you can see my screen. Roger Goodell. Damar Hamlin and obviously Donna Kelsey with her two boys playing in the Super Bowl. First time ever, apparently. But anyways, guys, let's get right into it. Let me know if you could hear me clearly. Everything is going well with the stream. Now check this out, man. Damar Hamlin was wearing, I'm not going to get into all of this, Takashi Murakami. Is that how you pronounce it? Basically a $3,000 jacket. And you could call it the Travis Jesus jacket. Now, I'm going to share with you guys the imagery of this jacket if you have not seen it already. And I'm going to share with you my personal thoughts about Damar Hamlin wearing this jacket. So this jacket, this Travis Jesus jacket, Damar Hamlin was rocking it with the crucifix. And yeah, it really ticked off Peterson. Adrian Peterson, the Hall of Fame running back, is a professing believer in Jesus Christ. And this is what he said when he seen Damar Hamlin rocking out this jacket right here. And basically, this is the attire. We're going to get into it a bit. But Adrian Peterson said, look, man, you should be thanking God's son. That's how he started off. When he reached out to Damar Hamlin on social media via public, not DM, not direct message, public. So the question is this, was Adrian Peterson wrong or did Adrian Peterson go too far? I think he did with this first line here. You should be thanking God's son, because once you start to say stuff like that, no matter what you say afterwards, the person that you are addressing is not going to listen to you. You know what I'm saying? So even though Adrian Peterson was angry, now I'm going to talk about that as well, where that comes from. We got to be very careful as believers in regards to how we go about addressing things that we don't like in the mainstream. And I'm talking about even things that are blasphemous, right? We ought to respond, but we ought to respond seasoned with grace, but stern, but serious, but at the same time seasoned with grace and respect, you know? So when you're calling a young man who in Damar Hamlin son, at least the way he's wording it here, look, you're not gonna get the listening ears of Damar Hamlin. And actually, later on, another individual enters the conversation, and he says a few interesting things. We're gonna talk about what Mr. Taylor has to say. But anyways, Adrian Peterson says, yo, look, man, you should be thanking God, son. This is blasphemy. What's blasphemy? This is blasphemy. This is the attire that Damar Hamlin was rocking during the Super Bowl. Right there. And you could clearly see that the crucifix, the imagery here is just disgusting. You know what I mean, to say the least, right? The face of Jesus is all, mangled, and you see the clothing hung up, and then you have the Christ hung up next to the clothing. And so there's a lot of things here, obviously, that tick Peterson off, that ticks off many of us. And to be completely honest, this is very disturbing to me as well. Now, this is one of my reasons why I agree with Adrian Peterson overall, generally speaking, in terms of him actually putting this out in the mainstream. You see, addressing Damar Hamlin publicly. A lot of people actually got on Adrian Peterson for actually doing that, but I actually don't. Right now, I'm going to share with you guys why. The reason why I agree with how Adrian Peterson went about at least publicizing it, I believe that it is important to do that, because this right here, guys, that Damar Hamlin is rocking out, this right here is basically a what do you call it? It's basically Damar Hamlin projecting a message. Okay, he's in the Super Bowl. He's at the Super Bowl. All eyes are on Damar Hamlin. All eyes are on his attire. All eyes are on his message, what he's portraying. And he's portraying a diluted Christ, at least in the imagery, depicted on this jacket. And this depiction goes against the biblical God, the biblical Christ. And this makes obviously a clear mockery and a diluting of the beautiful purity and righteousness and holiness that Christ possessed, right? This dilutes Jesus to some type of, comic. And Adrian Peterson, a man who's clearly taking God serious based upon the way he responded, you got to understand, everybody was on Damar Hamlin's side, guys. All right? To go against Damar Hamlin in any way, shape, or form you could be canceled, right? Because the whole world was behind Damar Hamlin. But Adrian Peterson, coming out as a believer, and he came out strong out the gate, he said, this is blasphemy. I agree with that 110%. As I said, I agree with him publicizing it, because Damar Hamlin is publicizing a Christ that is anti-biblical. Now I will say this, right? Damar Hamlin may not have meant any ill. So we got to be very careful not to judge people's intentions as well. But this is a false depiction of the biblical Christ. And it's not just a false depiction, it's a mockery of the biblical Christ. So when you get righteous anger, response has to occur. You see, I appreciate the fact that Adrian Peterson is not afraid to address sensitive issues and situations, regardless of the popular narrative. You understand? So as I said, anybody who was to put a rebuttal against a Damar Hamlin, especially looking at what Damar Hamlin has undergone, you could face some serious consequences. But Adrian Peterson didn't care. But matter of fact, he did face a few if you're on social media and you actually check out his Instagram, he got a lot of backlash for the way he addressed the situation. Though, some of that backlash was actually, in my opinion, warranted and necessary. Why? Because you don't address a grown man like this. You should be thanking God's son. This is when righteous anger is stimulated. And righteous anger is good, but if it's not controlled, you could walk out and manifest that anger in the flesh. If you remember the scriptures, Jesus was being taken captive in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Peter gets up and goes after the servant with a sword, aimed for his head, cut off his ear. And what did Jesus say? Put away that sword. So even though you see that Jesus is being blasphemed, Jesus is being attacked, I believe that there ought to be a response from the believer, but this response has to be a godly spiritual response. So I appreciate Adrian Peterson for his response, because many Christians are cowards. I'm going to say that right off the bat. But the way and the reason why I'm doing this video very quickly is because I think that this whole entire thing that has transpired is a very good template, I believe, in regards to how Christians ought to go about addressing certain things and how we ought not go about addressing certain things, right? So I have no issue with, because you gotta understand, and actually Adrian Peterson says it anyways later on. Damar Hamlin is a public figure. You know what I'm saying? So this is necessary. This is necessary, right? And I don't have to speak so much about why this is so necessary. All you got to do is turn on your television and you'll see the attacks against Christianity, the attacks against Jesus, the attacks against the truth. So is someone going to stand up against this nonsense, whether Damar Hamlin had these intentions or not? Right? So we got to stand up for what's true, and we got to put things in its proper context. In my opinion, right off the bat, Adrian Peterson should have addressed it, which he did, but he just should have addressed it in grace. And I believe that it would have been more receptive to those who actually read it, read the thread, because right off the bat, no matter who you are, when you read this, you don't want to hear anything else. So he goes on to say, this is blasphemy. We all fall short, but come on, man. I find this disrespectful. I find it disrespectful as well. Now, check this out, guys. Interestingly, not everyone agrees with the future Hall of Famer, including former star running back Fred Taylor, who believes that Adrian Peterson handled the situation in the wrong way. Now, we are going to read what Mr. Taylor had to say in response to the way Adrian Peterson addressed the situation. Okay, so I'm going to answer that question that you just posed there, brother TJ. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to read Taylor's response there, because I think this is important. Then I'm gonna go back to your question. But check this out. Mr. Taylor says he's responding to Adrian Peterson. He says, you should DM him, bro. I'm sure he's listened to your opinion. Posting it doesn't help anyone. So he's basically saying, Adrian Peterson, you posting this, you posting your rebuttal and your rebuke does not help anyone. I agree, but I disagree at the same time, right? But overall, I agree solely based upon the way Adrian Peterson worded, or the way he addressed it, the way he started his post. But posting, generally speaking, no, I agree. I think that it was important for this to be put out there on public display. Now, I'm going to get into the reason why Mr. Taylor had an issue with Adrian Peterson posting this publicly. But I'm actually going to get to your question, brother. So you asked the question, are we worshiping the image of Christ on who he is? Okay, so are we worshiping the image of Christ on who he is? If I understand your question correctly, I think that's really what it ought to be, right? Like, we got to be very careful, generally speaking, to not be quick to even make depictions of Jesus. Like, far too often, I feel like Jesus has become a fashion trend as opposed to a God who we ought to just worship and serve, and be mindful and sensitive when we even think about putting the words of Christ on, on clothing or a type of image of a Christ. So I feel like what has happened is the biblical Christ over time, because of the way society is becoming dimmed down and desensitive to that which is true. I feel like the true Christ is being blasphemed, because the true Christ is being formed and molded into basically a golden calf. What I'm saying? It's almost like the children of Israel. God is up there in the mountain with Moses, and the people say, let us make ourselves a golden calf. This golden calf will be our God, right? So I feel like fashion and the trends, in the image of Jesus has been the substitute for a long time for God. So we substitute the true God for our man-made creation in the image of God. But the way we recreate God, basically that's what we're doing, recreating a God that coincides or that is cohesive to the way we think God ought to be. In our futile minds, we are recreating a God to serve and to worship and to glorify. So what I believe what is happening here is we ought to be worshiping the true image of Christ for who he truly is. And if we are going to depict the Christ in any way, shape, or form, this depiction of the Christ, whether it's through a sermon or whether it's through, fashion, ought to line up with who he is biblically. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like, and look, as I said, actually, we're going to read it. Damar Hamlin, apparently, he did not have ill intentions in doing this, right? According to him, his desire was not to blaspheme God. But I find that at times where we are right now in society, we're at a place where people just don't take the biblical Christ serious, right? He has become a fashion trend, and this has been evident for quite a long time now. You understand? Like, we have him hanging on our necks. You understand? We have him hanging on our T-shirt, and we're depicting him however we choose to depict him, because we are not sensitive to the realities of who he truly is. So because we're not sensitive to the realities of who he truly is, we animate him. We make him a character. And many people, like Damar Hamlin, went about doing that clearly. Like, to him is style, right? But that does not necessarily mean, though, that deep inside his heart, he had ill intentions to do so. It's just the way Jesus is being depicted in society today that leads many young people like him, for example, and many, matter of fact, down that path to take the biblical Christ, the pure Christ, the holy Christ, and dilute him and make him a fashion trend. So Adrian Peterson had all the right in the world to go after Damar Hamlin. It's just the way he did it, the wording, right? Like, when you call a man son, I don't care how young this man is, in that kind of tone, it's on public display. It's not a good look, right? It's very hard for anybody to listen to what you have to say afterwards, but I feel like that was necessary for him to address Damar Hamlin, nevertheless, publicly. But listen to this. Mr. Taylor, right? Mr. Taylor said to Adrian Peterson, this was his response. He said, you should DM him, right? He's basically saying, hey, man, Adrian Peterson, why are you going to blast the man on public display like that? Why don't you just direct message him? I'm sure he's listened to your opinion. Posting it doesn't help anyone. So this is why he says that posting it doesn't help anyone. He says that Damar Hamlin is young. And he says basically that young people don't always think before they wear things, just like people who wear skulls and other things that don't align with Christian beliefs. Very true, right? To a certain degree, as I said, many people, especially young folks, they don't see things the same way that many of us older folks see things, right? But he goes on to say, try to reach him. Now, this is a question I have for you guys. Serious question, right? We know that the Bible talks about, if your brother offends you, what does it say? Go to him in private, and deal with him. And I've been wrestling with this, to be completely honest, back and forth. Now, I'm not saying that this is the same situation, right? And I don't know what Damar Hamlin believes in, to be completely honest. So I'm not really going to compare the situation to what Jesus was speaking about in Matthew chapter 18. But is Taylor onto something here? Would it have been more appropriate if Adrian Peterson dealt with Damar Hamlin directly before posting it on social media? And my answer to that question is yes and no. Yes and no. I say yes because when you're able to deal with the guy on the one-on-one, you're able to not misjudge him. You know what I mean? If you just post something and put something out there and you didn't deal with that person, you risk misjudging that person's intentions because you didn't deal with that individual on a one-on-one. But at the same time, as I said already earlier in the stream, Damar Hamlin is a public figure and he's a billboard. You understand? And he's depicting a message on his jacket, a clear message and the message that he's depicting is Jesus could be animated, guys. Like, this is not a Jesus that we have to hold in high esteem. Like his actual jacket projects that type of message. You don't need to take Jesus serious. It depicts that message. It just does. It comes off that way, even if it wasn't his intentions. So, we live in a world that people are taking Jesus Christ soft, and we very rarely see Christians stand up on public display and call people out call things out for what they ought to be called out for. But I agree. I think Mr. Taylor here has a great point. The question is this, guys. Did Adrian Peterson take Mr. Taylor's advice? I'm gonna share this with you guys. Check this out. Adrian Peterson responded to him. All right. Now, check this out. Adrian Peterson, who is a devout Christian, still wasn't having it. Try reaching him on a one-on-one? No. This is what Adrian Peterson said. But this was different. I know young people don't think at times, older as well. So he's saying not only young people, but older people as well don't always think, which is true. But with everything surrounding his situation, this isn't one of those moments where it's a young guy not thinking. So that's what Peterson wrote back to Taylor. So he believed, based upon his response, that Damar Hamlin clearly knew what he was doing. And that's why Adrian Peterson was angry. Now, I understand where Adrian Peterson is coming from to a certain degree, but I think that this actually supports Mr. Taylor's point. The only way you could understand if whether or not Damar Hamlin was intentional with it or not is if you actually speak to him on a one-on-one. So us as believers, we got to be very, 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 very careful. Very careful, right? Now, this is the question before I continue, because it doesn't end here. It doesn't end here. How would I have handled it? I asked myself this question. So if I was in Adrian Peterson's position, how would I have handled it? I would have put it up publicly. But I would have made sure that I was very careful with what I'm very clear with what I was saying and why I'm saying what I'm saying. But then at the same time, I will hit him up on a DM because I think that's important. And I want to know where his heart was at with choosing that type of attire to wear to the Super Bowl after all the prayer and all the love and all the support in the name of Christ. You blaspheme Jesus. Look, guys, I'm going to show you this outfit again. This is blasphemous. Regardless of what you want to say, you could call it style, you could call it fashion. Put somebody else there. Put Jay-Z there. Make a mockery of Jay-Z or one of these fools. Why mock the only name by which man may be saved. This is a mockery. This is not cute. You know what I mean? Like, we gotta stop. Like, but I understand where this comes from. So when I say we gotta stop, it's not gonna stop, because this is deeper. This is dynamic, right? And Damar Hamlin may not understand all of that, but there's some serious things going on, especially in media, where they love to mock and depict Jesus in such a way, and sell this to the young folks, like a Damar Hamlin, for example, and it just becomes fashion. All right. So no, that has to be called out for what it is, and the whole world has to understand that Christ ought not to be mocked. But there's a way to do it publicly. There's a biblical way to do it. But so the question is this, though, as I said, did Adrian Peterson overcome his his issue here in regards to, okay, let me reach out to Mr. Hamlin on the one-on-one? And the answer to that question is actually yes, he actually did. So at about 4:10 this afternoon, late afternoon, Adrian Peterson says that he spoke to Damar Hamlin about the disrespectful jacket that he wore at the Super Bowl, right? So yeah, he actually spoke to him about this, and he said, while Peterson says that he still hates the jacket, he doesn't believe that the 24-year-old was coming from a place of malice. But how did he understand? How did he get to the place where he found out that the 24-year-old Mr. Damar Hamlin was not coming from a place of malice? He came to that conclusion through what? Through direct conversation, not through assumptions, not simply through a post, right? You can misjudge somebody based on a post, or you can misjudge somebody based upon how they operate. So that's why I said it's very important to address that person. But remember, as I said, the reason why I agree with him putting it publicly is because Damar Hamlin is a public figure. He's held to a higher esteem. Everything he does and says is a message. It is a direct message to the masses. And Adrian Peterson does not want a diluted Christ to be that message perpetrated to the masses. So I agree with Peterson there. And I thank God that Peterson took Mr. Taylor's advice and reached out to Damar Hamlin on a one-on-one, so he could at least speak to him and figure out and find out exactly why Mr. Hamlin chose to wear that jacket. So at least he came to the conclusion that he doesn't believe that it was coming from a place of malice. He doesn't believe that Damar Hamlin was purposely trying to demean Jesus and blaspheme Christ. He goes on to say, I spoke with Damar and we were able to discuss our thoughts as men. I want to be clear. I'm the last person to judge anyone. I love that. And that was never my intention. So he's basically saying my intention was not to judge him. And that's beautiful and that's powerful, right? And I thank God that Adrian Peterson came out with these updates and posted these messages on social media, because that first message that he posted on social media came off as if that's exactly what he was doing, right? And you got a lot of pushback on that. But anyways, now this is key, guys. As believers, we ought not to compromise what we know is true. So Peterson says, however, I do feel as if the jacket was disrespectful and it was something that I needed to share. I needed to share it. Why? Because he cared about who? The Christ. The way Jesus is depicted. The perception, right? He understood the value of Christ. He understands and knows that there is no one that could be saved outside of Jesus. And his relationship with Jesus, I believe, drew him to a place where he had to address this. And that's called godly anger. And that's called the Holy Spirit being grieved within the believer, where you ought to do something ought to be done, and something ought to be done aggressively, but in grace. And he understood that at the end of the day, he wasn't going to stand back and watch Jesus undergo this constant disrespect, because it doesn't only stop there. There are millions of people encountering this depiction, this false depiction of Jesus. And that's not okay. Now he says, I do realize everyone makes mistakes and falls short at times. So again, my intention was never to judge, just to share my opinion, right? Damar Hamlin is a human. Adrian Peterson is a human. I'm a human. We're all human. We all have our flaws. We all have our mistakes. And Adrian Peterson clearly acknowledges that. He goes on to say, Adrian then addressed Hamlin directly, writing, Damar, I have respect and love for you, and I wish you nothing but the best, but I just can't rock with that jacket. I love you. I love you from the bottom of my heart. But I can't compromise. I can't endorse that nonsense. I can't endorse that sin. I can't endorse that, man. I can't endorse that. That's the way believers ought to respond all the time to that which is contrary and anti-God. We can't be, you see, the world wants us to compromise what we truly believe. And many Christians, unfortunately, fold in order to fit in to the world's regime and the world system so that there may not be any pushback. We want peace, and the kind of peace that we want, we are willing to surrender by compromising what we know is true. And then what do you have? A shallow version of Christianity. Men and women who are scared to sacrifice whatever it may be, because they want to be at peace with men. So they're willing to sacrifice their biblical beliefs and their truths. And Adrian Peterson is saying, look, I love you. That doesn't change, but I can never rock with that which is anti-God. That's not going to happen. And he goes on to say this, and this is the reason why, this is the main reason why I believe Adrian Peterson had the urge and acted upon that urge to address Damar Hamlin publicly. This is why I said I agree with him addressing Damar Hamlin publicly, because it goes on to say, I feel like there are a lot of people, young and old, looking up to you, and with power and influence comes great responsibility. Damar Hamlin has to be held accountable. That's it. And he continues to apologize. I apologize for offending you, because he did, with the way he came at him. But he had to come at him. He just had to. He had to come at. Look, we can't be afraid to address issues when issues arise as believers. We can't be afraid. We just got to be prayerful in how we go about addressing issues, in how we go about doing it. And make sure that, as I said, is seasoned with grace, led by the Spirit. Adrian Peterson continues. He ended his message with a peace offering of sorts, saying, this is what Adrian Peterson said, after speaking with Damar, I have an understanding that it didn't come from a place of ill intent. Hashtag grateful, hashtag God, hashtag forgiveness. That's important. And when we are able to see where people come from, we're able to deal with people in accordance to who they are and where they are. And I think that when we are able to do that, when we're able to deal with folks based upon where they are and who they are, it frees us from any misjudgment. It frees us from, any misconstrued perceptions of that person. We're able to gauge and understand where that person comes from. And that is actually healthy, and that's actually good, so that when God gives us more opportunity to deal with this, to deal with a specific individual, we at least know who we are dealing with, and they will be willing to listen to you because they understand that you at least came to them and listened to them. No one wants to listen to someone who refuses to listen to them. And I believe in this situation, Adrian Peterson opened himself up to Damar Hamlin via DM, and I believe that was necessary. That was good. That was important. And one more thing. And Adrian Peterson doing that expresses humility as a believer. And not only that, Damar Hamlin could see, wow, okay, yeah, he posted publicly, but he, as a Christian, and many Christians are not willing to do this. As a Christian, he says, you know what, I'm sorry for the way I did it. I'm sorry for the offense, at least the way I said certain things. And at least Adrian Peterson approached them on a one-on-one, dealt with them on a one-on-one. If you are an unbeliever encountering a Christian going out of their way to do that, there has to be some type of love there and respect there and admiration there. And I think that just makes the faith that Adrian Peterson upholds look and seem, because it is, look and seem legitimate, as opposed to, man, this guy's just a religious bigot. You know what I'm saying? Nah, like he reached out to him, and that was, and to me that was cool. That was dope, and I'm thankful for the update, because I made a video already prior to the update. So with the update, it just makes everything much sweeter. Now, this is how I believe we ought to address situations like this, right? When issues arise, when Christ is being blasphemed, especially when it comes down to, people who have, a specific platform. I think that it needs to be drawn to the forefront, because this needs to be corrected right there and then. The public needs to understand. You're going to put Jesus Christ on public display and mock him. We're going to have to put everything in its proper context in public display, on public display, because young and old people are watching, and you have power and influence. We're going to have to do that. But if possible as well, let's reach out. There's nothing wrong with reaching out, because people do make mistakes. Not everything that we see out there that seems negative comes from, some bad intentions. Not everything we see negative comes from ill will, right? Some things do, many things do, but not everything. But yeah, man, that's my 2 cents on this. Let me know what you guys think, man. Make sure that you guys, write your responses down on the comment board. What do you think? You think Adrian Peterson went too far with his response right off the jump? I think he did. But do you think he should have did it publicly or not? I think it was good that he did go public. What about Damar Hamlin? Do you think that I'm blowing it up, I'm making it more than it actually is? Let me know, man. Let me know if you guys don't think that that jacket, with the modified Jesus isn't blasphemous. Let me know and find a way to justify that one for me. Anyways, guys, that's all I want to share on this one. You already know it's late. I love you all. I pray that this may have helped you guys look at things in the future, things that come our way in regards to, things that we see out there, especially in the mainstream, in terms of how we ought to go about addressing situations. I pray that this may have helped you guys in some sort of way, bring some clarity. Once again, don't forget, like, share, and subscribe to Aim High. You already know it's all love. Until next time, take it easy, guys. Peace.